My mill tried to claim my future baby. Her meltdown was epic when we revealed the gender. My mother-in-law didn't suddenly lose her mind the day we told her I was pregnant. That's the part people usually don't understand when I tell this story. They imagine one dramatic moment where everything changed. But the truth is, it happened slowly, quietly, in ways that felt almost harmless at first. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. At the time, I was too focused on being polite, on keeping peace, on not rocking the boat with my husband's family. I didn't realize I was slowly handing over space that should have always been mine. When my husband and I found out I was pregnant, it was early on a Sunday morning. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor, staring at the test like it might disappear if I blinked too hard. We'd been trying for a while, and there were months where hope felt dangerous, like something you didn't want to lean into too much. When the result finally showed up positive, I didn't scream or jump. I just sat there and cried. My husband came in half asleep, saw my face, and knew immediately. He dropped down next to me, and for a few quiet minutes, it felt like the world shrank down to just us and this tiny secret we were holding. We waited a week before telling anyone. We wanted time to breathe it in, to let it feel real before opinions and expectations came crashing in. When we finally told his parents, my mother-in-law reacted like she'd been waiting her entire life for that moment. She gasped loudly, pressed a hand to her chest, and started crying so hard I thought she might pass out. She hugged my husband first, holding onto him like she was afraid he'd disappear, then turned to me and placed both hands on my stomach without asking. It startled me, but I told myself she was just excited. She kept repeating the same phrase over and over. My baby is having a baby. At first, it sounded sweet, emotional. But something about it stuck with me in a way I couldn't explain. I brushed it off because that's what you do when you want things to stay peaceful. I smiled, nodded, and let her have her moment. After that day, things changed fast. She wanted to know everything. Every appointment date, every symptom, what I was eating, what I wasn't eating. She'd text me constantly, sending articles about pregnancy written 20 years ago, then get annoyed when I said my doctor had given me different advice. If I said I was tired, she'd remind me that women have been having babies forever and that I shouldn't make it into something dramatic. If I mentioned being nervous, she told me I needed to toughen up. The comments added up. They always landed softly enough that calling them out felt dramatic, but sharp enough to leave a mark. I started feeling like my body wasn't really mine anymore, like it had become a public project she was overseeing. Still, I stayed quiet. I didn't want to cause tension between my husband and his mother, and I kept telling myself this was just what excited grandmothers were like. The first moment that truly made me uncomfortable came during my second ultrasound. When I mentioned we'd gotten some photos, she immediately asked for copies. Not one or two, all of them. She said she wanted the originals just in case. When I laughed and said I'd keep them safe, her smile tightened. She repeated the word again, safekeeping, as if I wasn't capable of protecting my own child's memories. Not long after that, she started slipping up with her words. She'd refer to herself as mommy when talking about the baby. At first, I corrected her gently, thinking it was a mistake. She waved me off and said it didn't matter, that titles weren't important. But it mattered to me. When I brought it up to my husband, he said she probably didn't even realize she was doing it. He promised he'd talk to her. He did. And she cried. She accused him of pushing her away, of replacing her, of forgetting everything she'd sacrificed for him. By the end of that conversation, he felt guilty, and I felt like the bad guy for even mentioning it. After that, I stayed quiet again. As my pregnancy moved along, her involvement turned into control. She told me what kind of birth I should have. She assumed she'd be in the delivery room. When I said I wanted it to be just me and my husband, she looked genuinely offended. She told me she'd already requested time off work to stay with us after the baby was born. She didn't ask, she informed me. When I tried to set boundaries, she laughed and said I'd understand once I realized how overwhelming motherhood really was. The gender reveal was supposed to be something simple. We didn't want anything extravagant. Just family, a cake, and a moment of happiness. I told myself this would be different, that for once, it would just be joyful. My husband promised me he'd step in if his mother crossed any lines. I needed to believe that. In the weeks leading up to it, my mother-in-law became obsessed with guessing the baby's gender. She bought clothes without asking and kept them at her house. Blue ones, all blue. She started referring to the baby as him, constantly. When I reminded her we didn't know yet, she smiled and said, I do. She said it like it wasn't a guess, like it was something she'd already decided. The night before the reveal, she called me and asked if I could come over alone. She said she wanted to talk privately, woman to woman. Every instinct in me said no, but I went anyway, telling myself I was overreacting. She sat me down at her kitchen table and stared at me for a long moment before speaking. She told me some women weren't naturally maternal, that motherhood didn't come easily to everyone. She said sometimes it was better for a baby to bond with someone experienced early on. My chest tightened as she spoke. I didn't fully understand what she was implying, but it didn't feel right. I told my husband everything when I got home. He was angry, truly angry this time, and promised he'd handle it. He said she was just afraid of being pushed aside and didn't mean what it sounded like. I wanted to believe him. I really did, but the unease didn't leave. The day of the gender reveal arrived warm and bright. The family gathered in our backyard, laughing, taking pictures. The cake sat on the table, untouched, holding the secret inside. My mother-in-law hovered near me the entire time, one hand always brushing my stomach, her attention fixed on me like she was guarding something. Every time someone said your baby, she corrected them. Our baby. When it was finally time, everyone gathered close. My husband wrapped an arm around me and I could feel how tense he was. My mother-in-law stepped closer, almost between us, phone already out, eyes shining with tears. She leaned toward me and whispered, "I've known from the start." We cut the cake. The colors showed instantly. Before anyone could cheer, before I could even process it, my mother-in-law made a sound I'll never forget. It wasn't joy. It wasn't a shock. It was sharp, panicked, almost angry. She shook her head, stepping backwards, saying, "No. No, that's not right." At first, people laughed, thinking she was joking. Then she raised her voice. She accused us of changing it, of lying, of taking something from her. The yard went silent. She looked straight at me, not my husband, and pointed at my stomach. Her face twisted with something dark and desperate as she said, "This isn't what we agreed on." And in that moment, I finally understood. She hadn't been excited. She'd already decided this baby was hers. For a few seconds after my mother-in-law said those words, no one moved. The backyard felt frozen, like the air itself had thickened. The smiles people had been wearing slipped off their faces one by one as they realized she wasn't joking. My husband tightened his arm around me, and I could feel his body tense, like he was bracing for impact. My heart was racing, not just from shock, but from a sudden, painful clarity. Everything that had felt confusing before now made sense. She kept talking, her voice getting louder as if volume alone could make reality bend to her will. She said the cake had to be wrong. She said someone must have mixed it up. She looked around at the guests, searching for agreement, for support, for someone to back her up. No one did. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone laughed nervously and then stopped when she realized how serious this was. My husband finally spoke. He told her to stop. He said she was embarrassing herself and upsetting everyone. That only made things worse. She turned on him like he'd betrayed her. She accused him of choosing me over his own mother, of shutting her out, of stealing something that was meant to be shared. She said she'd dreamed of this baby for years, said she'd imagined how things would be, how involved she'd be, how close they'd be. Every word made my stomach twist tighter. I tried to speak, but my voice came out shaky. I told her this was our child. I told her she was crossing a line. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. Her face flushed red, and her hands started shaking. She said I didn't understand what motherhood really meant. She said I was selfish, that I was trying to keep her away, that I didn't appreciate everything she was willing to do for us. The word us felt wrong when she said it, like she was including herself where she didn't belong. That's when my husband stepped fully in front of me. He told her firmly that this was our baby, not hers, and that her behavior had gone too far. He said she wouldn't be in the delivery room. He said she wouldn't be staying with us after the birth unless we invited her. He said she needed to respect our boundaries if she wanted to be part of our child's life. His voice didn't waver, and for the first time, I saw real fear flicker across her face. She started crying then, loud and dramatic, like she always did when she wasn't getting her way. She said she was being punished for loving too much. She said she was being pushed aside like she didn't matter anymore. Some relatives tried to calm her down, but she pulled away from them, insisting she was the victim. The party ended right there. People made excuses and left quietly, avoiding eye contact as they went. After everyone was gone, the yard felt empty and wrong. The cake sat half-cut on the table, forgotten. I felt drained, like every ounce of excitement I'd had about the pregnancy had been replaced with exhaustion. My husband apologized over and over, holding me while I cried. He said he hadn't realized how bad it had gotten. He said he should have stepped in sooner. I believed him, but the damage was already done. In the days that followed, my mother-in-law sent long messages blaming me for everything. She said I'd changed her son. She said I was turning him against her. She said she was worried about the baby being raised by someone so controlling. Reading those words while pregnant made me feel sick. My husband responded once, clearly and calmly, restating our boundaries. When she ignored them, he stopped replying. She showed up at our house unannounced a week later. I didn't open the door. I watched from the window as she stood there, knocking, crying, talking to herself. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I knew if I gave in even once, nothing would change. Eventually, she left. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks without a knot in my chest. We went to therapy together. My husband and we talked about boundaries, about family dynamics, about how easy it is to normalize behavior that shouldn't be normal just because it's familiar. He admitted that growing up, his mother had always struggled with control. This wasn't new, it had just found a new focus: our baby. As my due date got closer, we made our plans clear: no visitors at the hospital, no announcements until we were ready. We informed the nurses, the doctors, everyone. When the day finally came and I went into labor, it was quiet, calm, just me and my husband, the way it should have been from the start. Our baby arrived healthy, screaming, perfect. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the drama, not the stress, just this tiny person placed on my chest, looking up at me like I was the whole world. And in that moment, I knew without a doubt that protecting this child was my first and most important job. We waited a full week before telling the extended family. When my husband finally called his mother, her reaction was cold. She congratulated him, but made it clear she was hurt that she hadn't been included. He told her again that things would only work if she respected us as parents. She said she needed time to process. We gave it to her. Months later, she still kept at a distance. She sees the baby occasionally, supervised, always polite but distant. She no longer calls the baby hers. She no longer makes plans without asking. I don't know if she truly understands what she did wrong, or if she's just learned that pushing won't work anymore. Maybe it's a bit of both. What I do know is this: pregnancy taught me something I didn't expect. It showed me how important boundaries really are, not just for your own peace, but for your child's future. Love without respect isn't love, it's control. And control has no place in parenthood. I used to think standing up for myself would make me the bad guy. I was wrong. Standing up for my child made me a mother. And if that means disappointing someone who wanted to play a role that was never theirs, then that's a price I'm willing to pay every single time. If this story hits close to home, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps more real stories like this get told.